Hello, 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 hello. Come on in. Come on in. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. I hope you guys are ready tonight to talk about some spooky stuff because it's Christmas season. Yeah. Hello, Patty. Hello. Nice to see you. Come on in, y'all. Eva, Eva, Eva. Yay. Let's see who else shows up. Might just be the three of us. Who knows? Could be chill. Hope everybody has had a good week so far as we are moving towards this Sagittarius new moon on the 14th and then the Great Conjunction. We've all seen the Dark Crystal. We know how this goes. This is good, right? It's spooky, but it's good. Come on, come on, come on in. Make yourselves at home. If you are at home. If you're not, really make yourselves at home. While we are getting ready to start the lecture, feel free to get yourself comfy and cozy, light a candle, light some incense, maybe grab something to drink, maybe grab a little snack. If you work with divination systems, you might grab your divinatory tools like your tarot or your runes or your shells that you work with, anything like that. Very appropriate. You might grab a journal to take notes. You might grab some art supplies. The notes that you might want to take might not work with words. You might want to jot your ideas down in another form. Come on in. Make yourselves at home. We will get started with the lecture shortly. We have a full basket of information. Surprise, surprise! For those of you who have been here before, I'm sure you're well aware. But if this is your first time in class, welcome. Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff in this class for sure. I definitely try to cover what modern paganism is doing, but I also talk a lot about what ancient paganism was doing, that being a huge umbrella concept, and then what everybody's doing around the planet as well. So come on in, make yourself at home. We will get started very shortly. Very, very shortly. I'll probably start at 5:05. I usually start about 5 after. You'll learn. Be on time. Otherwise, you're going to be late. We have a lot to talk about. Hello. Hello, hello. Darlene, Willow, hello. Thanks for joining us. Absolutely. Thanks for joining. Yay. Despite all of the classical American trappings of Christmas, Yule and wintertime is like some of my favorite portion of the wheel. So I'm always excited to teach this class. There's lots of cool stuff to talk about. Hello, hello, Reverse Nurse. Cool name. I don't know who that is, but nice to meet you. It's a great name. It's a great time of year to be a reverse nurse. I mean, despite the COVID situation, obviously, it's a good time of year to be a reverse nurse. All right, it's 5:06. Okay, start the show. It's time. Welcome. My name is Megan Angus. This is the Wheel of the Year, and tonight we are talking about, in this lecture, we are talking about Yule, the winter solstice, the long night, midwinter, Moddernacht. It goes by a ton of names. And that's what we're going to discuss in this class. We're going to talk about the actual winter solstice moment itself, and holidays that are connected to it, and traditions and practices that are connected to that moment itself, as well as the 6 to 8 weeks of Yule season that runs through December into January. Hi, Dustin. Welcome, welcome. Yay. Okay. This class is being taught on unceded ancestral Duwamish territory, aka Seattle, Washington, and 5% of the proceeds from the year-long tickets that were sold for the Wheel class, as well as individual booklets for each lecture, are all going to a group called Real Rent Duwamish, which is a nonprofit set up to pay rent to the Duwamish tribe, which, for whatever ridiculous reason of caucasity, has not been granted federal recognition as an actual tribe. And yet, Seattle, one of the richest cities in America, can't find a way to pay our rent, so we're voluntarily doing it ourselves. I encourage you, if you are in the Puget Sound area, check this group out. And if you're not in the Puget Sound area, if you are somewhere else in the country of the United States, look for a group like this in your local area. There are definitely nonprofits set up to help funnel reparations to Native Americans toward the hashtag Land Back project that is happening across the country to get indigenous territories back in the hands of the people who ancestrally would have been there in the first place. Because, as pagans, it's not enough for us to just think about our promised reward at the end of a good lifetime. We want it to be good right now for everybody that's involved right here. So it is a magical act that we're doing collectively. And I was going to get the number together for what we have raised this year, but last year it was right around the area of 300, and this year it's been about 500. Very, very exciting. If you want to get involved in that, look down in the description for this video. There is a connection to Real Rent Duwamish directly, as well as a link to download the workbook for this class to study along at home, or the Dropbox for this class, which will have all of the slides that we're about to look at, any other resources that I feel like throwing in there, the calendar for the 8 weeks of Yule season, as well as the workbook, and a download of this class for future study. Okay. What else do we want to talk about before we talk about the stuff that we're here to talk about? Gender is a construct. Okay. We will talk about goddesses and gods. In no way am I referring to genders. Though it can express itself in various genders, but there are gods of all the genders, and gods with no gender, and gods with multiple genders. So what we're really talking about are archetypal states and energetic streams that all humans have access to. So when we're talking about goddess energy, we're talking about that energy that's in all of us to call in and to yearn and to be fecund and be ripe and be fertile. All humans have that capacity. And when I'm talking about God energy, I'm talking about that thing that is in all of us that is extroverted and thrusty and yang oriented and really excited to push out into the world and make things happen and to act and to be virile and fertile in that way. And the androgyne characters and gods and goddesses, or deities, really, that we work with in all of these holidays are the portions of us that are mercurial, that change shape and change form, like the moon. We all have that energy in us as well. We are allowed to decide to change our mind. We're allowed to change shape and change form. So we can look to all of these deities and have a personal relationship with all of these energies. All right. Last but not least, The purpose behind these classes, I've been teaching the Wheel of the Year in various forms since the mid-2000s, and the point to all of this is multifold. One, I want to create a space that is safe and open for people who are recovering from monotheistic religions. Perhaps they are atheists and they're curious, or they're pagans and want to know more. The idea behind that is to give you an area to explore, ask questions. There's no wrong questions here, but to play with these ideas and concepts and try them on and see how they feel. But I also am really eager to empower people with these ideas and these concepts. It is one of my great purposes in my life, I think, to show people that it is not only right but good for us to put on the mantle of the deities that we worship, and instead of kneeling before them, standing with them and seeing ourselves in the same type of power as well as responsibility that we grant these deities, knowing that we ourselves have that capacity within us, both to do the thing and to be responsible for doing the thing. So, hopefully by the end of these classes, you are encouraged to go and be an active participant in building a better reality right now, here, for us and all of us. Okay, Wheel of the Year, Yule. Let's do this. It's time to put Santa on a spit. Okay. So when we learn about the Wheel of the Year, we get an opportunity to develop a respect and an appreciation for the similarities between traditions as well as the differences between traditions. And it just gives us a deeper understanding of ourselves. So here at Yule, winter solstice, first off, let's start with a little bit of science and a little bit of astronomy before we get into the religious and spiritual and philosophical traditions of the moment. It's my firm opinion that a lot of the holidays that have come to be a part of the 8 Sabbats that we, as modern pagans, celebrate in the Wheel of the Year practice, were really about timekeeping. They really were about keeping track of astronomical events to make sure that we were sending the cattle out or calling it in at the right time, planting our seeds at the right time, getting ready to harvest at the right time. Obviously, we're going to get, some indications from the natural world, but sometimes those things, if you were off even by a week or a few days, you could jeopardize the health of the entire crop. So a lot of this is about timekeeping. The word solstice means sun still. So what is happening at winter solstice? Okay. If you get up and watch the sunrise every single day on the eastern horizon, this is for folks that are in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously, you will notice something. Every single day from winter solstice to summer solstice, the sun will rise on the eastern horizon further and further north. And it will ride very high in the sky over our heads, and it will set on the western horizon further and further north until we get to summer solstice. And of course, that's the longest day and shortest night of the year. And then from summer solstice to winter solstice, the sun moves back across the eastern horizon at sunrise, western horizon at sunset, further and further south until we finally get to winter solstice, where it barely makes its way up over the horizon and barely makes itself up a few degrees into the sky and boop, right back down again on the western horizon to the south. That phenomenon that happens at winter solstice and summer solstice, of it being as far north as it's going to go or as far south as it's going to go, that happens 3 days in a row. wow, there are some religions. Nothing's coming to mind, but I know that there's some religions out there that are really into that 3-day thing. I wonder, whatever. Yeah, if you can think of something, drop it in the chat. So we have this moment, and the sun appears to stand still. Sun still, solstice. That's what's up with this word. So we were saying, or this phrase. So what we were saying is winter solstice, winter sun standing still for 3 days. And then at summer solstice, we're saying it's the other one. It's going to be the one in the north. Now, where you are in the northern horizon, or excuse me, the northern hemisphere does affect how extreme this change is over the course of your year. If you live really close to the equator, the difference in the length of day is about a half hour to 45 minutes. It's really not that different between summer solstice and winter solstice. Yes, the sun still moves, but it's very incremental. It still does its 3-day thing at summer solstice and winter solstice, but then the movement back and forth between those 2 points, pretty small. And the change between the longest day, shortest night, and the shortest day, longest night, not that big of a deal. However, the closer you get to the poles, the more extreme this is for the observer. And so for us here in Seattle, Washington, and we're not even close to the Arctic Circle, for example, I mean, the difference can be upwards of 2 to 2.5 hours different from summer solstice to winter solstice in a single day. So if you are in the Northern Hemisphere and you're fairly high up in the Northern Hemisphere and you're really feeling like, are the days actually really getting that short? Yes, they really are. And if you get really close to the North Pole, the difference is even more extreme. So we see that reflected also in the types of observances, the ritual, religious and spiritual and philosophical observances, the way that people marked this and what they did about it as they saw it. We'll get into that. So winter solstice, sun stands still 3 days. What is happening to us here in the Northern Hemisphere, however, as we're experiencing this? Well, serotonin production is dropping, melatonin production is rising. We want to stay cozy, we want to stay snuggled in, we want to sleep 20 hours a day. It seems fine, right? You're like, hibernation. Yes, this makes sense. I get it. Absolutely. We want to also be very insular, right? It's not just that we want to stay home and drink cocoa, but we also are less inclined to be super involved with other people and their stuff. We're less inclined to be out in the world conquering and trying to start brand new projects. We're more inclined to go in and kind of consider ourselves and consider our own stuff and kind of deal with things in a more intimate way, personal way, insular way, even a subconscious or unconscious way. Okay. How long have humans been recognizing winter solstice? We don't know, but it is absolutely one of the oldest recognized dates under the sun. And there are megaliths literally all over the planet marking the winter solstice. There is the Temple of Karnak at Luxor, as well as Karnak in France. There is Chichen Itza, as well as Tulum in Mexico. We have Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. Stonehenge, of course. The Gothic Circle in Germany. Bighorn Medicine Wheel in Wyoming. Cerro del Gentil Pyramid, as well as Machu Picchu in Peru. We have earth mounds all over North America by various Native American tribes that are all aligned with winter or summer solstice. And here, right here in Washington, we have the Sky Stone up in Bonnie Lake, Washington, which is claimed by the Puyallup tribe, and it also marks winter solstice. But one of my favorite sites on the planet that marks winter solstice is Newgrange, also known as Bruganashi or Brunaboy. Newgrange has been thought of as a cairn and a burial mound for quite some time, but thank goddess, archaeological and anthropological exploration and work has continued over the years. Newgrange is one of the oldest complete, quote unquote, monoliths or megaliths under the sun. It was built in 5200 BCE, before current era. That is older than the pyramids by about 500 or 600 years, older than Stonehenge by about 1,000 years. And it's so old that by the time that the Romans were occupying what we think of as the Celtic lands, they were venerating it as this great old mound. And there's Roman gold coins that have been found there that were left as some sort of, ablution or what have you. So it was thought of as a burial cairn for a long time. Luckily, research had continued, and now it is believed to be a sacred site that was not used for burying stuff, but actually a type of celebration of life and livelihood. Newgrange is aligned with winter solstice, and if there's any kids in the room, this part gets a little randy, so, bring them close. On winter solstice, Newgrange, I should say, is a great mound, and it has a stone tunnel built into the very deep heart center of it. And in the very back of the very front of the tunnel, before you get in, there is a long, oblong-shaped white granite, white quartz stone with triple spirals, the triscles, I always say the word wrong, sorry, carved all over the surface of it. And then you go down this tunnel, deep into the center of this great mound. And at the back is 3 points. And at the very back is a 3 spiral piece carved into the wall. And on winter solstice, a beam of sunlight, a turgid, veiny, throbbing beam of sunlight, comes rip-roaring across the horizon and just kapow, with consent, obviously, right? Okay. Just right to the heart of Newgrange, deep down the tunnel, right to the back, and that beam of sunlight hits that triple spiral carving in the back. And that happens for 3 days in a row on winter solstice. Now, for a long time, people thought this, again, was a burial mound, and they didn't quite understand, or I guess I should say this, there is a lot of conjecture around the name Brugana She or Bruna Boy, because she is often thought of as to mean fairy, the fae folk, the elementals in Western European tradition. However, other people translate this name as the womb of the goddess, or the room of the goddess. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this is when that beam of sunlight shoots all the way down that shaft and hits that white granite wall in the back. There's white granite and quartz. On winter solstice morning, the heat from the sunlight warms up the frost inside the tunnel, and everything gets wet. There's nothing like old-time religion, right? All right, go ahead and bring the kids back in the room. Okay, we're done with the dirty stuff for now. Hi, 7C Mystic. Yay, I'm seeing you just now. Welcome. Come on in. Okay, so this is obviously something, this time is obviously something that's been really important to humans for a long time. And from a very old age, this has been a holiday that is a celebration of the union of light and materia, the material plane and earth. Okay, so let's get into it. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of science and a little bit of history to get you started off with this, that this is something that humans have been celebrating, recognizing, witnessing, accounting for literally thousands and thousands of years. Okay, let's move on. Let me do this. There we go. So, some other names that we have for this holiday. Yule, the wheel, the night of mothers, the long night, midwinter, Collada, and Alban Arthen. Okay, let's talk about these just a little bit. What we get from a lot of these is timekeeping and a really potent set of symbols. So Yule means wheel. Obviously, then the wheel, okay? The long night and midwinter. These are names that are more common for our Central European and Northern European groups that would have been experiencing winter as several months. Their very heavy fall and nearly winter weather is starting to set in around fall equinox, right? Back in September into October. So the middle of winter literally is winter solstice. This is the darkest point, the dip, the lowest dip in the sun's energy. So, a timekeeping name. Collada is a Slavic name. It's also spelled Kalatka, Kaladia, and it literally means calends, which comes from Roman occupation. They also referred to this time period and festivals dedicated to they refer to this time period as calends, and the calends in Roman belief were a collection of time-oriented deities. And so this was a time period that those time deities would have been worshipped. Alban Arthen is another timekeeping type of name. It represents this idea of the low sun and coming back again. We also have Mian Gimrite and La Andriolan, which is Welsh, and the first Scottish. Those also mean Capricorn season, the start of Capricorn month. So timekeeping names, right? Names centered around the idea of this is where we are in the calendar. Okay. So Yule and the wheel. This time of year, in old almanacs, Yule was represented by a wheel. And I'll say it a couple of times in this class, but if there's ever a point where a circle might stop and start again, it's here at winter solstice. So we see that concept reflected or left over, I guess, in these names from the past. Let's talk about... Okay. There's that. Next slide. Witch's work. Stuff that we are dealing with here in the Yule season. Okay. Death and rebirth of the sun. Return to source. Hibernation. Celebrations of light. Purification. Protection. And divination for community. All of that stuff. Celebrations of light, and then celebrating purification, protection, divination, as well as doing that. Protection, purification, and divination practices for the community. This is the big stuff that we're doing or working on in Yule season. And we will, as we go through class, talk about, it'll make itself apparent. If this is your first time in class, I tend to go on tangents. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so the big themes that we are working with at this time of year. This is our work, right? And so let's distill this down into just a smaller collection of words and then expand that back out again, because Jupiter is a major planet in my chart. So if we can expand things, let's do it. We are talking in this season about death and dying. Still. If you were here for my Samhain class, and if you weren't, go watch the video. But if you remember from our Samhain class, fall equinox is sort of the start of the dark half of the year. But it really kicks in at Samhain. It really kicks in October 31st, November 1st. But it starts to creep in, right? And we're going from fall equinox all the way through to spring equinox. So we really are talking about a full half of the year is the dark half of the year. Well, from Samhain, October 31st, through winter solstice, December 21st, into Imbolc season, which starts February 2nd or 1st. This is really the dark heart of this whole process, this whole trip that we go through in winter. And so as much as there's holly jolly around this holiday, and a lot of it has been enforced by consumerism and capitalism in the guise of Christianity, this is not actually traditionally a holly jolly time. It still is carrying through a lot of the darkness that we spoke of in Samhain. And in fact, as I said, in Samhain season, in Scorpio season, no shade to Scorpios, but Scorpio season and Samhain season is very much like being told about the spooky thing that's about to happen. Yule season is when we experience it. In Samhain season, we get a lot of warnings, right? Of, oh, let's hope the food doesn't run out. Oh, let's hope we slaughtered enough of our cattle, and not too many, right? I hope grandma makes it through the winter. Her rheumatoid arthritis was really bad last year, or, her cough, it took 4 months to get rid of it. I hope she makes it through this time. That's what we're doing at Samhain season, and we're casting lots, and we're checking in with the fate deities, and we're doing divination, and we're out there playing with chaos and wearing our masks and running through the streets and doing our thing. We're kind of getting used to the chaos and the breakdown of the physical plane. But here at Yule is where we now find out how that actually plays out. And so again, there is sort of this holly jolly plastic thing sort of shoved on top of this, and then if we lift that lid off inside, there's actually a lot of spooky stuff going on for Yule season. So goths, take heart. We still have a chance to restore this season back to its true horrifying nature. Okay, so death and rebirth of the sun, hibernation, return to source. Okay, themes: death and dying, being reborn, the light, and light without heat. Okay. So, I'm talking about all of this darkness. Why? Well, we already went through the science portion. Weren't you paying attention? The sun is dead. The sun is dying, and it's on its way down. It's having a harder and harder time getting itself up into the sky. Every day we're watching it. It's weaker and weaker. Its life force is ebbing. This is the Holly King for modern pagans and some ancient pagans. The Holly King is the dark twin. It is the portion of God energy for pagans that rules over the portion of the year from summer solstice to winter solstice. So from June 21st through December 21st. And then on December 21st, the Oak King comes through and kills the Holly King, or ends the Holly King, maims the Holly King, sometimes just humiliates, and that's enough of an ending. And then the Oak King takes over. And the Oak King rules from December 21st, winter solstice, through to summer solstice, June 21st. Takes over the light half of the year. So, who are the deities that we're working with at this time of year? And I go back and forth with this in my classes about listing deities for you, because a lot of what I like to do is just talk to you about the themes of the season, and then you go to your belief systems and you work with who you're supposed to be working with at this time of year. There's no way in the world I could list. I mean, I could, but that would either be boring or, I don't know, maybe a cool mantra to just hear like hours of names of deities. I don't know. All right, I'll look into it. If you guys are into ASMR deity stuff, let me know. Maybe we'll do it. But I do want to give you a collection of deity names to work with for this season. Just because I feel like they need to be said more than anything else. So, like I said, we're still dealing with the energy that we kind of opened up at Samhain season. It's not gone. We're kind of in the heart of it, actually, right now. So we are, witnessing the underworld journeys of all of the great deities that go on their underworld journeys. Some underworld journeys have already wrapped up by the calendar that civilization practiced. They already would have finished it by now. But a lot of the underworld deities start in Samhain season, go through winter solstice, and don't end until the very end of winter season or the very beginning of spring season. So all the way out in March. The Persephone myth is one of those. Other deities that I think of at this time of year that are doing their underworld journey and that their myths and their symbolism really have a lot to say for us is the Ishtar Kegel underworld journey myth, as well as the Osiris, Isis, Nephthys, Set, Horus cycle. So normally on the physical plane we have order. The sun rises and sets like it's supposed to, the moon rises and sets like it's supposed to, the plants grow, the animals breed. It's lovely, right? We can just go about our business and we don't really have to do much. The earth sort of attends to itself. And then winter hits and it all stops. It all begins to break down. The bruisey purple of Samhain gives way to the blasted white of frosted Yule, and what was rotting before is bare skeleton of earth to us now. And it is chaos. God is gone, or we're watching one of our deities literally struggle every day to even make its way up over the horizon, when that's what it does every single day, right? Everything is backwards, everything is upside down, everything is wrong. And so, and timekeeping for a lot of civilizations in the ancient era that practiced timekeeping gets really hard at this time of year. Because what if your calendar wasn't quite right? Maybe like the Mayans, you had 360 days, right? After a few years, that 5 days is really going to make a difference. And suddenly, you're like, wait a minute, we should be planting by now, but there's no way. The sky is not right. The weather's too hot, too cold, like something's wrong. So timekeeping practices really come into play here at winter solstice, and timekeeping deities really come into play at this time of year. So we're talking about our death and dying deities. That's definitely Osiris. That's definitely Persephone. That's definitely Ishtar, in terms of deities that are going on underworld journeys and then become involved with deities that are in charge of the lands of the dead or the dead. And that sits also very comfortably with our crone imagery that we work with at this time of year. So as the goddess moves through the year, she starts in spring. They start in spring as the maiden, and they are curious and bold and naive and a little goofy. And then we move into the mother form that is more of a sustainer and a provider and a type of protector. And the mother goddess wants to produce on the physical plane and sustain the order and the abundance and the goodness of the physical plane. But she evolves and they become the crone, which is the old version of this character, the matured version, the wise version. I've seen some stuff. I've been a kid, I've been an adult, and now I'm something beyond that. And so our crone goddesses come forward at this time of year as well. For some traditions, the crone goddesses even start to come forward around fall equinox, way back in September. And again, another group of them will come forward and make themselves known at Samhain at the end of October. But if they haven't already, in whatever civilization we're talking about, the crone goddesses are coming forward now, and really making themselves known and making themselves present. Okay, so those are all of our death and dying type deities that we're working with. But what about all of this rebirth stuff, right? Where's that coming in? Okay, so we've got death and dying. We've got lots of chaos on the physical plane. Okay, cool, got it. But where's the rebirth stuff? Where's the light? Please. Anybody help. Right? Like I said, at Samhain, it starts to feel a little desperate, and then by the time we get to Yule, it's getting tough. It's getting a little spooky. Okay. So the other deities that we are working with at this time of year fall into two main categories. We have our solar and light deities, and then we have our producers of the light deities. For the most part, but not exclusively, but for the most part, our solar deities are male deities. Now, before I get into that, let me say there's a ton of female and non-gendered solar deities. We've got, who am I thinking of? Amaterasu and Saint Lucia and Befana and Pele and Red Tara and Hathor Sekhmet and the Agni and that are female or female presenting, female identifying goddesses, identified as female by the cultures that work with them. And they are the sun. They are a personification of solar power, solar light, solar heat. They all go through underworld journeys at this time of year. Their underworld journeys are fairly chill compared to their male compatriots, their male counterparts. The female solar deities at this time of year, the deities that are female, that are embodiments of the sun and solar light and solar heat, go through underworld journeys right at this time of year, but they are trials where they maybe have to go through a variety of riddles and challenges and things like that, or they are self-imposed exile, where it's almost more of like a pout session or a timeout or a I am done with all of you fools, I need 5 minutes to myself, thank you very much, I'll be back when I'm ready to be back. It's that sort of a thing. It's self-imposed, right? And then those female aligned solar deities come back out to the world, usually after 3 days. And they come back out. Maybe they're a little changed, but mostly it's themselves, and they're sort of refreshed and they're renewed and they're ready to get back to their job of being the sun. Okay. The male identified deities that are our solar deities are the deities that are being born at this time of year. And, oh Lord, is there a massive pile of them. My God. We have, literally, my God, we have Christ. Don't know if you are familiar with him, but he's born at this time of year. Horus, Mithra, Balder, Jupiter, Sol Invictus, and that is literally like the tiniest little list that I could possibly imagine. These are all great leaders of the religion or the philosophical tradition that they are a part of. They become the great patriarchs of the religion. Not on Solstice, but earlier in December, we see Gautama Buddha ascend and achieve his enlightenment. So we see this thing of this sort of there's this focus and this importance on the great patriarchs of our religious practices and religious systems from around the planet, Northern Hemisphere, and nearly all of them are born on Solstice, the 21st, not the 25th. Nearly all of them are born with a halo or a crown or a solar mark on their forehead specifically, or their head glows, or they have a radiance that comes off of their head or their hair. There's some sort of glowing head situation happening with all of these characters. And if it isn't that character, and there's a ton of them being born at this time of year, like I said, this is like the tiniest little list in the world. If it isn't that form of the god, the other form of the god that we see at this time of year, for the most part, is wise old protector grandpa guy, who's maybe a little hobbled, but is a protector, is wise, is a grandpa. Hearn, Zoroaster, Saturn, Dionysus, the Green Man as the Evergreen Man. Again, very, very short list of deities that we could work with. But to get you started there. And again, these are all sort of grandpa-like figures. My favorite nickname for Saturn, if you've ever come to get work done with me, I refer to Saturn as Angry Grandpa. And this is part of why, because his holiday comes at this time of year. And it's the energy that he represents. Sorry. Here's your Metamucil. Okay. So, that, for the most part, represents our light deities when we're talking about solar deities and then the male deities. For the most part, nearly all of the male deities that we're working with this time of year are solar deities, and they're being born, and they're the great patriarchal leaders of their religions or their cultures that they come from. If not that, it's grandpa. Sometimes a wise grandpa sort of figure. And then we also have female solar deities that are not necessarily born at this time of year, but a lot of them do have a festival or a holiday, or their myth cycle takes place at this time of year. Okay. And to me, the star of the show, because I'm biased, super biased, is the other goddesses that we are working with at this time of year. And they are the goddesses that are doing all of the work, as usual, producing all of this cool stuff. Okay. So we have our solar deities, and they're doing their thing. But a lot of the goddesses that are really, like, ramping up the action at this time of year and really making it happen are Progenitrix deities. These are goddesses that are able to conjure the world into being. They don't need a mate. Many of them are referred to as virgins, like the Virgin Mary is a goddess that has a lot of holy days around winter solstice and all through December and into January. And she is considered a goddess that is virginal in the sense of unowned, untouched, whole unto herself. And these progenitrix goddesses are able to will the world into being. They insist the world into being. And many of these goddesses are the mothers of these great gods that are the leaders of all of their religions. So as much as we might want to be super fascinated with these homeboys, hello, their moms are actually kind of way more banging. Okay, let me just get that in there. We have the Virgin Mary, we have Pakrati, we have Isis, Yameya. Again, a very, very short list, but to get you started in the idea of these are all goddesses that insist the world into being. Tiamat is another one, who we start working with at Samhain, and her serpentine body runs all the way through winter season. So these goddesses were really in charge of bringing the light back to the world. Now, this is the great goddess, right? This is the triple goddess. We just had the mother character, the mother archetype at fall. We just changed into the crone. The crone is having babies? She's a progenitrix? What? Well, this is a big part of that light thing, and light without heat. What is this goddess bringing? She's bringing enlightenment. If there is a form of the goddess that is maybe a little bit more abstract, that feels a little bit more remote than how she seems at any other time of the year, it is the crone. And it is the goddess in her or their winter aspects and winter work that they do. They feel a little more remote, right? We go outside, the trees don't have leaves, the animals, the squirrels, the rabbits, the raccoons, if you live in the city or if you're in the country, the animals that you normally see are gone. A lot of the insects that you normally see are gone. It's frosty, it's cold. It's quiet, right? I mean, there literally is kind of a quiet that sort of descends when it gets really cold. Everything becomes very still. And it's like the body of the goddess itself has grown still. And yet, she's still clearly doing something because the evergreens are still shooting up into the air. Onions are still coming up, right? Cabbage is still growing. We still have winter flowers that happen. But she can feel a bit more remote at this time of year. And I think it's because she's coming to us in a form that is so unlike how she is the rest of the time. In spring, she's a fleshy being that's excited to explore her body, as the maiden, right? And as the mother, she is a producer, and she's, that's really about her physical body. But then when we come to the crone, it's about what she knows. It's about what she's seen, and it's about what she is able to produce from herself without the assistance or interference of anything else. It's sort of this idea of, even when everything else has died, I'm still here, and I'm still doing the thing. We're still at the gig, kid, and we're getting tips. So this deity is light without heat. She is the embodiment of enlightenment, and she is producing or bringing forth enlightenment through her son. Paganism, guys. I don't know what to tell you. And a lot of this is happening internally. A lot of this is the spark within, the spark from within. And we're illuminated and enlightened internally, but externally, we may still be in hibernation. We may still be moving really slowly. We may not be making any obvious progress on the physical plane out here in the world. We might just be kind of shuffling through our life, going through the daily process and the daily motions. But internally, that spark has been lit, and the process is beginning anew. That is ultimately going to pop up and out of the soil and go, hey, I'm here in 3 months at spring equinox. Yes, it's literally only 3 months from now. See? We got this, you guys. It's fine. All right. And then other goddesses that we are dealing with at this time of year are time and fate goddesses, as well as genderless deities. There's some time and fate deities that are absolutely genderless that we hang out with at this time of year. And that's everybody. So that's more or less everybody. So how have humans recognized all of this stuff? What have we been doing to celebrate all of these deities and all of these ideas? Well, we have practices like the Yule Log, bringing back the corn dolly that we might have worked at Lunisod or at Mabon or at Samhain during the harvest season. We have the Yule Candle. We have lights, torch processions, caroling and wassailing, which we'll get into in just a second. Debt forgiveness is something that we see in a lot of different regions. Gift exchange in a variety of forms. Food, feasting, and pranks. Nobody's working. It's also a time that we will ultimately burn our greens from Yule, and bonfires we see a lot of at Yule and throughout the Yule season. Okay. So, and one other deity. Sorry, I'm jumping back. One other set of deities that we do see at this time of year are star goddesses. So, let me go off for just a moment. If you don't mind, we're only an hour into class. We've gotten 2 slides in. Welcome. Typical. Let me go off for a moment on the Yule Log. The Yule Log is traditionally a form of the Green Man. That is ultimately what we're working with, is a form of the god energy. And it would have been oak or ash. The kids would be sent out to go chop down a tree and, some unsuspecting tree, and drag it unceremoniously back to the, actually very ceremoniously, back to the house. And actually, let me stop for a moment. Goddess bless pagan history and those who have attempted to document it. A lot of pagan history is a mishmash of symbolism and fact and fiction. And I don't mean in any way to shit on the authors of the past or to cast aspersions on those who did their very best to document things and to connect the dots and try to make sense out of the little bits and pieces of history that we have from the past. But it's really important to remember that a lot of pagan history was not documented And a lot of pagan motivation was not documented because those things were being written by the winners, and the pagans were often the people that were under somebody else's heel. And it was more important to destroy that history or to mutilate it than it was to preserve it. So one of the places where we see that is when we try to ascertain exactly what it was that people were doing, even 300 or 400 years ago, when it comes to pagan tradition, let alone 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 years ago. Some of this stuff has been retained, a lot of it is not. And one of the things that you'll find, especially with something like we're going to find with the Yule Log here in just a second, is everybody seems to have gotten the same basket of words and symbols and gestures, but they've all used them in different ways. So, the Yule Log. In some traditions, you'll find it documented in plenty of places that pagans, in theory, would have looked for a tree big enough that when the top was stuck in the fireplace, the end of the tree stuck out the front door, and you left the front door open. I'm serious. I'm telling you. It's in books. There's Wikipedia pages. Okay. I'm not saying it happened. I'm saying a lot of people say it happened, and I don't put it past them because pagans love fire, and really any reason to set things on fire and make a big old production about it. Yeah, I believe it. I'm buying it totally. Absolutely. But supposedly, you send the kids out to knock down an oak or an ash tree. Of course, both very holy in a variety of different pagan traditions. Drag it back to the house, and any neighbors or townspeople that saw this happening were obliged to tip their hat to the tree, or it was bad luck. The tree would have been doused in ciders and whiskeys and a variety of different boozes and beverages before it was ultimately dragged in the house. So not only do you have a tree now in the house, but also it's wet. Okay, so that's good. That's fine. Shove it in the fire. And burn, baby, burn. Burn, burn, burn. Now, there are a ton of different traditions about what would have been done with the Yule log before, during, and after. Sometimes things were carved into the log. Sometimes it was burned completely to ash, and the ash would be collected. People might be blessed with it. The house might be blessed with it. The grounds or the farming fields, the fields where the farming is going to take place, would have been blessed with that. And of course, if you do gardening, you know that ash is fantastic for soil health. So there's something to it, right? Every time. But sometimes a piece of the log would have been kept, and that piece, all kinds of things we see happen to it or are recorded as having happened to it. So sometimes that piece of log would be kept to next Yule, and a year later the Yule fire would be started with the piece from the old chunk. Sometimes that piece is carved into Kaleach, and it's kept on the mantelpiece as the Crone goddess Kaleach. Sometimes it was used for divination, a lot of different things. Oh, and sometimes that lump of log that's left over would be married or put into the same bed or sacred place as the corn dolly that had been woven at Lughnasadh or Mabon or Samhain. The corn dolly being a representation of goddess energy, the Yule log, of course, being a representation of god energy, and that being brought together. And then those two characters and all of this stuff has a date in January on a holiday called Plow Monday. Very original, super exciting. Plow Monday. I don't know how they came up with it. It's got a lot to do with plows. So Plow King, all of that. Yes. The fire would be started by the youngest kid in the house, as you do. That's how we want to do that. But if you were in the city, maybe like we are right now, and going and getting a 35-foot ash evergreen and hauling it back to your 5th-story apartment in the middle of Capitol Hill, Seattle, and having that jut out, that maybe that's not exactly realistic for your situation. Another practice would have been the Yule Candle. And the Yule Candle, there's a lot of concessions with the Yule Candle. Let's just say that. There's a lot of gimme room with the Yule Candle. In theory, it should be painted or lacquered, which is really safe to do with a candle. No, it's not. Do not sue me. But the candle would be silver or gold or both. And it's best if the candle can burn all night. If it can burn all the way through to the 25th, even better. But if it can burn all the way through to the 5th, even better. Why? Well, this marks a grand festival called Twelfth Night that happens at this time of year. I'll get into that in just a second. So, people might have carved things into this candle, and if they were really, really fancy, it's a candle that would last a significant amount of time. It should be pure beeswax, and then, like I said, if you've got some gold and silver, cool, but the pure beeswax thing is definitely the most important part. The stub of the candle, if the candle was a candle that would burn out by January 5th, the stub of the candle is also kept for a special thing that happens on Plow Monday. Plow Monday, Plow Monday, it all happens on Plow Monday. Okay, sorry. So Yule logs, that's what's up with that. That's really ultimately our big tree worship thing, other than cutting down the tree and not burning it, but just covering it with a bunch of lights. Also very, very traditional. And that really speaks more to our light ceremonies that we see at this time of year, as well as our evergreen grandpa worship stuff. As a side note, with the tree worship and the evergreen grandpa situation, if you go back through myth and folk tales from the Northern Hemisphere, if an evergreen is involved, it is a story about protection. And very interestingly, it's not just stories about protection, but it's very specifically often stories about people who have been cast out from their society. Maybe they screwed up. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe they were made into the scapegoat. So there can be a variety of reasons why they've been cast out. But these people have been cast out. They have nowhere else to go. They're scared and alone. And the evergreen offers them protection when no one else will. And I think that is something that's very interesting about the Oak King energy and this grandpa wizened energy, this crone energy that we work with at this time of year. Okay. Yeah, let's leave that there for a second. We'll get into it a little bit later. Okay. The other big tradition that I want to talk about from this time of year, let me look back at my list. I have like 100 million notes, as usual, and they're in literally no order at all. Yule logs, corn dollies, we talked about the candles, light, torch processions, carnival, let's get into that. Okay. Debt forgiveness, big thing at this time of year, just like in Samhain season, just like in fall season, Mabon season, debt forgiveness, big time. Debt forgiveness, we also see some of it happening in the Imbolc season as well. And my guess is it's because the harvest has come in. So whatever the earth has produced, that's it. You can't get blood from a stone. And if that farmer has only produced, 80 bales of grain, and they needed to produce 85, oh well, what are you going to do? You're not going to whip them until more grain shows up. That's not going to work. So in many ancient societies, these were times of year where debts were forgiven, whether they were debts of this year, or oftentimes it was a 7-year cycle where you had 7 years to pay off this person, and if you didn't manage to do it within the 7 years, whatever was left was forgiven. People felt a little differently about karma and things like that back in the day. It often came from an attitude of the roles could be reversed at any time. And so I don't want to have been mean to this person. I don't want to have pressed my luck, really, with this situation. I want to ask for what I'm owed, but I only want to ask, to the point that they can give it back to me. If they can't give it back to me, then what's the point? Gift exchange, obviously a relatively small part of the Christmas experience. Thanks, capitalism. Gift exchange is actually not a big deal, not a big thing for a lot of wintertime rituals throughout time across the world. Where we do see gift giving coming from is Saturnalia, another fantastic holiday that happens at this time of year, which we'll get more into in just a second. But during Saturnalia, there was gift giving. However, the gifts were usually pranks. They weren't intended to be some fancy, highfalutin, really important gift. It was meant to be a joke. It was meant to be funny, to lift spirits, to be silly, to pull a prank on somebody, that sort of thing. That's gift giving during Saturnalia. Feasting, obviously, it's a big deal. The work is done for the most part, right? Everything that is growing out in the fields, everything that's been growing on the trees, even the nuts, those have all been harvested by this time of year, and all of that stuff has shut down. All of the animals have been pulled in, and by this time in the year, you have probably culled off whatever livestock you are going to kill for this year to be able to make sure that you're able to feed the ones that you can keep alive, as well as have that meat to live off of, as well as to have the rest of the animal to use in a variety of efficient ways. I realize it's a bit morbid, sorry to the vegans and the vegetarians out there, but it is the reality of not only ancient peoples, but lots of humans around the planet. They have a very different relationship with their animals that they take care of, and that they herd. And in a lot of those civilizations, a lot of those societies around the planet, even to today, they are much more efficient with the body of this creature that they have killed and are using for subsistence. They pretty much use every single thing on it. So there's that. However, there wasn't a lot of work to be done by this time in the year. So hanging out and boozing up and eating lots of food and sleeping 20 hours a day. This is not just you avoiding your family at holiday. This is literally paganism, okay? So you have a job, all right? It is your spiritual job to take a nap after 4 slices of pie, okay? Just show them this video if they have any arguments. Burning greens and bonfires. Okay, we definitely have traditions of bonfires happening at this time of year, for blessing, for divination, for protection. Obviously, we've got the Yule fire going, right? There's a massive tree sticking out the front door. Yes, we have some stuff burning. I did find a really interesting tradition of some folks, I think that in Scotland, that would build a massive bonfire in the front yard and then 12 small bonfires around it for the apostles. And I was like, probably not. And this is purely my opinion. Okay. So opinion, I should have a little banner that flashes around opinion part, this is just me. But when I see that, we know that when we see these types of bonfires used at different Sabbats throughout the year, the fire was for the family. It was a divinatory tool and a protection thing, in that, just like with the Yule Log ashes, the people and the animals and the house and the holdings would all be blessed with the ashes. So I think that main fire was probably for the family and for the house and for the holdings. But those other 12 smaller fires, I see that as the 12 months of the year, and depending on how the fire burned, or maybe you threw stones in the fire, or you threw nuts in the fire, and how those things behaved, they became divinatory tools, and you had a sense of how was each month going to go. I don't know that. I am guessing that. So I'm going to be very, very clear. Lots of what I'm saying provable from vetted information. Unlike some shows on television, I vet everything that I say here. But I also want to be very, very clear where I'm going off the rails and just sort of saying, I think it might have been this. So I think it might have been that. And last but not least, obviously we are decorating the house with lots and lots of evergreens. This is, of course, the evergreen green man. This is our grandpa version of the green man. With his, I always think of cedar leaves as his like shaggy beard. And having these evergreens all over the house, A, smells fantastic. B, it's a really easy way to decorate. And C, it just looks good. I like it. But it becomes a protective border around your house, and you're sort of held in the arms of winter grandpa. And then some traditions, some pagan traditions, will take all of the Yule greens down if they've put up a tree, if they've just put up a wreath or boughs or whatever it is. Everything gets taken down by, say it with me, Plow Monday, bam, 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 in January. I'm telling you, it's a hip place to be. Or it's left up to Imbolc, which would be at the end of January, February 1st, February 2nd. And then at Imbolc, you would burn your greens. And there are even a few traditions that will leave their greens up after Imbolc, but absolutely by spring equinox. So the middle of March, you absolutely want to take your greens down and burn them. I recommend burning them by Imbolc. In fact, that's part of my Imbolc ritual that I'll do as a form of cleaning out winter energy and preparing, giving that winter its last 6 weeks to kind of do its thing in a clear, empty space. But we'll talk about that more in 7 weeks. But burning your greens, so leaving them up, enjoying the energy, and then burning them. And we don't talk about recipes and we don't talk about crafty stuff too much in my classes, but your greens are an incredible incense. They smell so good. You can also make an amazing potpourri, and they're really easy to work with because you get a lot of plant material. Even after it's dried, there's a ton of plant material. I will literally lay out a sheet on my floor and bring all the greens in the house and put gloves on and just let the needles dry out and just strip all the greens off. It smells incredible, first off. And then you can sew together little pillows and stuff them with the needles, the cedar leaves, and your pine and your fir and what have you. And hawthorn, and you can put them near a heater safely. We have radiators in my house, so fire is not a situation for us, but you could use them as a sleep aid, as a meditation pillow, like all kinds of really yummy stuff. So if you don't burn your greens, you can convert them into something very different, but continue to enjoy the smells and the oils that are coming off of them. But I will still burn some of them. If I do save my needles for projects, I will still burn a portion of them to release that energy and to say, thank you for your protection. And now we're moving into a different part of the year. But thank you. That was awesome. Okay. So I've been skipping around a little bit, but let me talk second to last, about Father Christmas, blah, 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 blah. Anybody into the kinks? All right. Father Christmas, Santa Claus. This is an archetype that I legitimately kind of feel bad for. Because poor old Santa is absolutely a grab bag of stuff from all these different archetypes and different traditions. Like, oh Lord. Okay, so briefly, Father Christmas, what a dude. Santa Claus. First off, red and white, right? These are definitely colors that we associate with Christmas. I don't want to say that we know this, but there is a popular theory about Santa's red and white colors that they actually come from the Amanita muscara mushroom, which is red and white, which reindeers eat and find Siberian shamans work with. And so Santa, if we look at Santa through that lens, Santa is the hippie in the parking lot at the Grateful Dead show offering you mushrooms, and you are like, yes, this is great. He's like, let me get my bag of tricks. Okay, maybe it's not all of that, but it's a lot of that. So first off, the red and white that we traditionally see Santa associated with is actually potentially from these mushrooms and Siberian shamanic practices, where the mushrooms would have been harvested in fall and now consumed in this long night underworld journey work that we are doing. But if we look back through time, the closest dude that we can find is Old Nick, Father Nicholas, Father Christmas, who was always dressed in green. So green man probably has nothing to do with it. And we know that his connection to that name, Old Saint Nick, is very likely connected to him being Old Nick, which is a traditional name for the devil, which of course is Hern, the horned god. So we can absolutely see the evergreen version of the Green Man and Hern and a lot of our grandpa winter deities in the body of Santa Claus. Coca-Cola, the soda company, likes to suggest that they turned Santa red and white in the 1930s, that's the only reason why he's associated with those colors. Sure, guys. Capitalism, I swear to God. Okay. But Santa's known for giving out gifts, right? Not his gig. Actually stolen from the super dope, ultra cool Italian witch goddess Befana, who dressed all in black and rode a broom around on Christmas Eve or winter solstice and would fly down the chimney and give gifts to kids. Sound familiar? So one of the other connections to the Saint Nick name, sorry, bouncing back and forth here a little bit, that I found recently was Bell's Nickel or Bell's Nicky. And this is a Central and Northern European character who is a Santa-type character, but they look exactly like Krampus. And so there is an interesting cross-section there, because we do still have a little bit of Crom Dub energy. If you're familiar with Crom Dub, this is a character that I talk about in a lot of my fall time classes. This is a Western European, Scottish, Welsh, Irish deity god who is a crooked, dark god. He's a broken god. Old, crooked. He walks with a crooked cane, a crooked man who walked a crooked mile. This is Crom Dub. And he's a shadow. He's the dark twin. And so this Belznicki character connects us to Krampus, connects us to Santa, and there is something there about the Santa character also taking on a bit more of a menacing form. Okay, so this brings me around to Twelfth Night. Twelfth Night, okay. This is the easiest way for me to talk about a whole bunch of different stuff. And what we're talking about here are our practices of caroling, wassailing, our torch processions, charivardi from Europe, mummers that would be doing performances at this time of year. There is this great collection of these activities that runs throughout time. All of this stuff is very similar to the caroling, the carousing that we see around Samhain, where we have collections of people come out into the street, they dress up in various costumes, maybe they're dressing up as boogeymen and demons and what have you, and they go up to the doors of various houses and knock and ask for food and drink, and you kind of have to entertain them because you're entertaining the forces of chaos. They also are playing the roles of the dead for that family, coming back and eating food and taking drink and taking sustenance and sort of being welcomed back into the house and given their space again. So we're still doing that stuff. But like I said, at Samhain, it's an existential threat. Now at Yule, the threat is really here. The frost is really on the ground. Things are really icy. Things are genuinely cold. It's genuinely fatal to sleep outside on the ground at this point in the Northern Hemisphere in a lot of places. And so we see this tradition around Twelfth Night. And for Catholics, it's called Twelfth Night. For pagans, it is, I say Modresnacht, because that's the word that I learned first. It's also Modronite is another way to pronounce it. And this is Mother's Night. This is Twelfth Night. This sits very comfortably with our traditions of Saturnalia, bromalia, skelking is another name of a tradition very similar to this that we see from Shetland, Scotland. And this all would have incorporated masking and guising, just like at Samhain season. Lots and lots of animal masks in particular, very, very popular at this time of year. Bulls in particular. I don't have time enough to go into it because it's already 6:20. But bulls at winter, kind of a big deal. And this was humans continuing to entertain and make room for and make concessions to the forces of chaos that were continuing to break down reality. Most recently, we see the Twelfth Night processions, and these masking, caroling, wassailing processions that would move through towns as being kind of rambunctious and sort of silly and kind of fun, and there'd be a little pranking. But as it goes back through time, it becomes quite sinister. It becomes quite hardcore. There was a lot of rocks through windows and people getting roughed up, and stuff would be stolen or broken. It was very much you must entertain and must make room for the forces of chaos. And I say this in a lot of classes, and I'll say it again here. You have to make room for chaos, or chaos will make its room. And so these practices were an attempt to witness the fact that everything was shutting down and going backwards and undoing itself and unspiraling, and time itself seemed to be grinding to a halt. And that brings us back to a lot of our timekeeping symbolism and holiday stuff. We see holidays like Saturnalia. We see holidays like the Feast of Janus Bifrons, sorry. Janus Two-Face is what we're saying there. Because it is the time of the old year and the time of the new year. And so, again, as I said at the beginning of class, if there is ever a time where a wheel might start and stop again, it is here. It's the stitch where we have stitched the two ends of the years together. We can still see a little bit of the seam there. A lot of these deities that we work with that are our progenitrix, that are our light producer deities, also have a foot in the old world and a foot in the new world, or a foot in the past and a foot in the future, and the baby is dropping down right here in the present. But the process of the processions, of Twelfth Night, this was the rough band, and this was ultimately a continuation of the Wild Hunt. The furious host. And at Samhain season, we see a variety of different characters being participating in the furious host or the wild hunt, but there are a lot of male leaders, and at this time of year there are a lot of female identifying leaders. A lot of the goddesses and femme leaders of the wild hunt, as well as the crones, are sort of being introduced to the physical plane and brought out for their procession of like, I'm here, bitch, it's my turn now, hello, hello. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. And so these processions would get pretty wild. We see them in a whole bunch of different forms. One of the things that would be really common was for people to go out into their fields with torches, and they would sing to their dormant trees, and they would sing to their dormant fields. If it was a time period where there was guns, they might shoot off shotguns and things like that and make a big ruckus and a big noise. But a lot of these processions were really about menacing people and kind of shaking people up and pranking people, but kind of, with a bit of intent there. But again, it was this idea of we sort of have to appease and make room for this chaos of undoing. And so coming back to that idea of timekeeping, we have all these different calendars, right? We see all these ways that people were trying to keep time. But if they understood the solstice and the equini, if they knew that those were points that could be tracked, then by the time we've gotten into winter, your calendar may have gotten way off. And so one of the things that we see with the modern night festivals and the Twelfth Night festivals is sometimes they're 5 days long, sometimes they're 10 days long, sometimes they're 15 days long, but they end at the same time. They always end at the same day, generally January 5th. And so whenever it was that you figured out, hey, wait, now we've just been drifting in the dark for a while, but I think the solstice is actually here. We can start time up again from that point forward. And we can start the wheel rolling again from that point forward, because we know, before the winter solstice happens, it's just dark and we're just drifting through the cold and the dark and we don't really know what's going on. But then we see the sun do that 3-day thing, boom, 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 and then start to head back in the opposite direction. And we know, the other half of the year has started. We can go ahead and proceed with the plan. Okay, so now that we have talked about so many things under the world, under the sun, that I don't even know where to... okay. 12th night, Madra's Nacht. Okay, we are dealing with all of our solar goddesses, but mostly we are dealing with all of our enlightenment mothers, our mothers that are producing the sun at this time of year. We're dealing with our Crone goddesses. Bifana, our witch goddess, would have been one of the goddesses honored at this time of year in this collection of the Mother's Nights. But really, we're dealing with a lot of our time and fate and star deities. So we have the good ancestors, the Christmas aunties, the good ladies, Dame Holda out there, shaking out her feather pillow to make it snow. The triple goddesses, but really the Crone. But the triple goddesses, of course, were the Fates, the Fortunes, the Norns. And then we have our Dizir here, our Valkyries, the Weird Sisters, Fairy Godmothers, female leaders of the Wild Hunt, as I said before, like Diana, Frau Holda, Lady Goda, Perkta, Dame Habondia. And so all of these characters are writing out, and they all, again, are embodiments of wisdom, fate, time, enlightenment, and the producers of that process in us and in the world. Food would have been left out for them. I think that this might be the root of the tradition of leaving milk and cookies out for, I almost said grandpa, for Santa. Same thing, right? Food and drink would have been left out for them, and the food and drink would have been there the next day, but it was thought that the life force had been drawn out of the food and drink and fed the goddesses, and then that would either be tossed into the fire or left outside as an offering for animals or what have you. Yeah, and old mother babushka is another from our Slavic traditions. Okay, so very briefly, because we still have a lot to talk about. I do this every time. I'm unstoppable. I love it. Okay, so we talked about our ritual work. We've talked about so many different traditions and ways of observing this stuff. So when we are doing ritual work, if you're journaling, if you're looking for things to put on your altars or what have you, the rising sun, fire, candles, lanterns, and other sources of light. Filling the house with light is a very old tradition at this time of year. And one of my favorite things to do in winter solstice rituals that I hold in my house is I will light a ton of candles and tuck them all over the room, and then have the electric lights on very, very brightly. And at some point in the ritual, I turn them off, and we have all those lit candles around us, and it's really, really beautiful. The Yule Log in whatever way. In fact, there is even a Yule Log that you can eat at this time of year. Evergreens, however you would like to work with them. Spirals, however you would like to work with them, because of course we are spiraling into the very center, and then we are going to start our way back out again. Spinning wheels, the wheel spinning and moving, stopping and starting again, right? Just like the sun. And then of course the goddess in white. Okay. So, global themes. Global themes, this is stuff that we are seeing other traditions and other religions around the planet practicing at this time of year. Hey, wow. That's a really familiar list. You mean we're all doing the same stuff? Who knew? Okay. So other things that we see in traditional practices in other religious forms from the past and the present: rebirth, transformation, working with ancestors or worshiping ancestors, enlightenment, wisdom, and the birth of solar deities. So, in your workbook, I have a nice big list of stuff here. A big long list of holidays that happen anywhere from December 20th to 25th, like the birth of Horus, the birth of Mithra, the birth of Jesus. If you didn't know, they're all born at the same time. The birth of Dies Natalis Solis Invictus. Heliogena, literally the birth of the sun. Diwalia from Rome. And then other holidays that we get to experience at this time of year, like Krampusnacht, the Feast of St. Lucia, etc. So we talk a little bit in the book about Saturnalia, even more than what we've done, Krampusnacht, etc. One of the other holidays that I think is really important at this time of year, of course, tonight, now that the sun has gone down, it is the first night of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to all of our Jewish friends and neighbors out there. They are celebrating their Festival of Lights, which is... Hanukkah was actually a fairly small holiday, but I think because of the pressure around Christmas and winter holidays that Hanukkah has kind of gotten blown up a bit over the centuries or the decades. But Hanukkah is really about the rededication of the Temple of Jerusalem, which was originally built by King Solomon, and currently is where the Dome of the Rock is, which is a sacred building in Islam. This tiny piece of territory is definitely a point of conflict and intensity for Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. But tonight is the first night of 8 of lighting candles to that process and that practice. Another holiday that we see at this time, or multi-day festival that we see at this time of year, of course, is Kwanzaa, which will start on December 26th and go through January 1st. And then on January 1st, we have Watch Night, which is an African-American Christian holiday that is dedicated to folks that ran the Underground Railroad, as well as folks that were being shuttled through the Underground Railroad. And Watch Night is a commemoration of folks who would take turns watching and protecting those people doing that work, or those people being saved and shuttled to freedom, or a type of freedom anyways. And then we also have a collection of Native American holidays like Soyal for Zunayan Hopi, the Haudenosaunee for Iroquois, and these are all holidays that are midwinter holidays. They're welcoming in the midwinter spirits, and a lot of those cats are also having a type of stopping and restarting of time, or restarting of the wheel sort of symbolism embedded in their work. And these are often also private ceremonies where folks are not allowed onto the reservations unless you live there, which is great. I think that's fantastic that those people get together and recharge with themselves and get their systems back where they need to be. And they've got some other stuff in here too, but you have to get the book. If you want the book, it's down in the descriptions. All right, let's move on to the astronomy, but I'm going to bring up the Sky Guide. Our astronomy that we deal with at this time of year, I've got a big list of various moon names for December and January, for all through winter. All of our full moon names come, well, not all of them actually. A lot of the full moon names that we work with come from the Algonquin. They have some really cool names for moons sometimes. They have some really goofy names too, but naming full moons is something that folks do all over the planet. And so we have names like the cold moon, Christmas moon, moon before Yule, bitter moon. These are all of our, a lot of our December moons. And then in January, moons like the wolf moon, moon after Yule, the quiet moon. And so something interesting about that, if November's moon is the last full moon before Yule, and it was. November's moon was, the full moon in November was November 30th, and there will not be another full moon this cycle. There will be another full moon this year, but not in fall. It is called the morning moon. So that last full moon that we experienced, which was in Gemini, that is the morning moon. And the first full moon after Yule is called the old moon, which I'm sure Capricorn really appreciates that. Okay. What we're dealing with at this time of year, constellation-wise up in the sky, it's Sagittarius and Capricorn, but in between them is the Corona Borealis. This is a pretty special spot in the sky that was definitely worshipped by Celts and Druids, and still is. The Romans and Greeks thought it was pretty important. Lots of different civilizations, the Navajo as well. And it has been seen as a camp, a castle, and a crown, as well as other things. It is a crown or a ring that is worn by Princess Ariadne, who, if you don't remember, is who uses her weaving skills to weave a thread that Theseus carries as he goes to hunt the Minotaur. There's some more bull symbolism. No time to get into it in this class. Sorry, but you have to go research it yourself. And then we go into Capricorn. So Sagittarius, Corona Borealis, and Capricorn. Obviously, Corona Borealis isn't part of the zodiac, but it is a pivotal piece here because, one, it is a constellation that does not dip below the horizon. It stays in the sky forever. It is called Caer Erenrod, meaning the castle of the goddess Erenrod. And it was thought of as a place where souls went to after the person had died here on the physical plane, that souls would head up to this place. This spot in the sky between Sagittarius and Capricorn is called the Gate of God. And on the opposite side of the sky, between Gemini and Cancer, is the Gate of Man. And that was thought of as the place where souls are born and ultimately descend down into the earth or the physical plane to be born in a body and go about its earthly business, as souls are wont to do. So, just that. That's all we're dealing with right here. It's just the place where the sky opens up and we go and meet God. No pressure. And then we'll move into Aquarius season after that. And that's where Imbolc season starts up. We have the Geminids meteor showers, the Ursids meteor showers, the perihelion at January 2nd, solar eclipse December 14th. That will be happening on the far side of the planet. Mostly folks in the Southern Hemisphere are going to be able to see that. I don't think anybody in the Northern Hemisphere is going to be able to see it, but a solar eclipse all the same. The perihelion is the place where we are in our orbit around the sun, where we are the closest to the sun. And so isn't that a lovely metaphor to work with at this time of year from astronomy, that when we are in the dark, we are actually closest to the source of light. Cute. Solar Yule, of course, sun moves into Capricorn, heliacal rise of Antares, first full moon of winter in Cancer on December 29th. And our first new moon of winter will be on January 13th in Capricorn. So, let's talk about the astrology for just a mo. We are most of the way through Sagittarius season. I did include Sagittarius and Gemini work in here, in the book. So, our new moon in Sagittarius is going to be on December 14th. So we still have a few days left of the Gemini portion of that cycle. So if you want to do that work, you can. But starting December 14th, we're moving into the new moon for Sagittarius. And that's really about getting in touch with and practicing your religious and cultural rituals as touchstones while moving through the season of death. Allow those traditions to kind of step forward and hold you as you move through that. And this new moon in Sagittarius is pretty potent, astrologically speaking. Again, kind of don't really have time to go into all of this, but the Great Conjunction, of course, is happening December 21st on Yule, the actual day of Yule this year, and that is the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn, two deities that we have been talking about this whole time, right? So this conjunction happens every 20 years. Not that big of a deal. However, Jupiter and Saturn have been having this 20-year conjunction date in Earth signs for the last 200 years. They are now both moving into an air sign. This conjunction is happening at 0 degrees of Aquarius on December 21st at about 8 o'clock in the morning here Pacific time. And it is the first time that it hasn't been in an earth sign in over 200 years. It's the first time that it has been in an air sign in about 600 years. And Pluto is pretty close by. It's close enough to say that there is a conjunction there. And some of this stuff are things that we haven't seen for thousands of years. So a lot of folks that are into astrology are really kind of flipped out over this. So if there was ever a year where Yule really, really does mean this idea of stopping and starting again, this is absolutely supported in the astrology that we are working with at this time of year. So Capricorn, new moon, and full moon work. Actually, let me bop back for you guys if you want to do your Gemini stuff. Actually, let me say this. Do your Gemini stuff. Describe the generations of your family you know using only adjectives. This is a practice that's going to be really important for you as your work goes through next year. So do this work. We've still got 4 days in the Gemini portion of the lunar cycle. So just do some journaling work with that. Describe the generations of your family you know about using only adjectives. And then the new moon for Sagittarius, December 14th. Describe an epic journey that calls you, that would push you out of your comfort zone. It can be in any landscape, internal or external. So this is not necessarily about like, oh, I want to figure out how to go to India 6 weeks, but it could also be, oh, I really want to figure out how to have this conversation that I've been putting off for 10 years. You know, just that. I'm always going to push you to do the hard stuff because what the hell else are we here to do, right? Let's go. So let me read you a little magical passage here. And then here is our slide for Capricorn moon work, moving through Cancer and moving through Capricorn. Let me say this first and then I'll read this. So as we move through the full moon in Cancer, I encourage you to journal your thoughts around goddessness in the context of creatrix source materia. What is wisdom? And if possible, moon gaze tonight, because there's no better time than to go check out the moon when it's in Cancer and it's doing its thing. It's where it's stoked to be. And then the new moon in Capricorn. This will be pretty far into the full moon in Cancer, is December 29th, so just before New Year's. And the new moon in Capricorn is January 13th, so way out there just before Imbolc season starts. And so when we move through the new moon in Capricorn, we are coming to a much more insular place in our work in Yule season at that point. January can be a pretty tough place for some folks. It can be a pretty bleak place. But ultimately, when we're working with Capricorn and Cancer energy, we are dealing with an energy that is sort of a discussion or an argument or a tug of war between me and my family and my home life and just taking care of this place here and now, and me in my great career path and my great trajectory in this lifetime and the great work that I'm supposed to be doing and my reputation and my status in society. And these two things can really fight against each other. I think a lot of the choices that people have had to make this year with COVID really exemplify the argument between Capricorn and Cancer of let me just be home and take care of my family and be at home versus no, you have to get out there and do the work. So when you move through Cancer, think about what it is to be a creator. And when you move through Capricorn, think about what it feels like to be excluded or forgotten. I want you to specifically journal about a time that you were included in something and what that did for you and to you, and a time that you were excluded from something and what that did to you and for you. Because, again, the work that we're doing is this tug of war, or this conversation between the two sides of this coin of what is it to, have a legacy. Am I worried about my legacy and my family in terms of me hands on my family and dealing with my family and my people, or is it about my legacy out here in the world? And we have to think about this stuff at some point in our process. And so during Cancer season, while there is a draw to come home and bring all of that energy, or Cancer moon, excuse me, it's not Cancer season, but while we're in this Cancer moon, there's a real draw to like bring everything internal and to just think about, let me deal with this moment, let me deal with my couch and this cup of tea and this one meal and making things nice for my family. But I want you to stand in that place and consider, what is it to be a creatrix? What is it to be a being that defines the world and insists the world into being and wills the world into being? And then when we move into that Capricorn moon, and there's all that encouragement to throw all of that stuff away and think about, I only need my career and that's it. What is it to consider being a part of a family? What is it to think of the world as family? What is it to think, what is family? And what is the point of all of my work in the face of family? Especially when we are thinking of the world as our family. And again, we will absolutely be moving into that phase of consideration of our energy and our work and our process as we move into Imbolc season and Aquarius. Okay. As we move into the last weeks of fall and on into Sagittarius season, foggy nights, frozen mornings, and waning sunlight begin to guide us away from the jump shock of funhouse carnival mask death and into the real spirit of death, the stillness, the void, and ultimately reunion with Source. We have either hit the reset button at Samhain or we hit it now. Time and life stop and take a couple of breaths and then begin again. Make sure you take the time to do the same. Our naked branches are encrusted in silver ice, glittering, frozen, stretching toward a blank sky. At winter solstice, the light hits its lowest point, which means it's only up from here. The Oak King has risen again with the reborn sun, sternly carrying the wisdom of the ages. The Holly King has frozen to death on some blasted ridge, hung up on thorns in his velvet frock while looking for berries out of season. We nurture and care for ourselves and our home, but more from a grim survival aspect than any warm instinct. We follow traditions, not from a sentimental urge, but because this is what kept people alive last time the village faced winter. We look across the wheel at the goddess, lounging in the warm, verdant abundance of the high part of the year. How far away she seems now. Winter may call on us to make hard choices. The energy of Yule can drive us to take precedence. The energy of Yule can drive us to focus on the function and tenacity of a thing, with physical world security taking precedence over comfort or loving solutions. Do not become hard like ice and stone during Yule, but have respect for their longevity. Consider What must be sacrificed by one who would be immortal and eternal? What heritages do you stand on? Now, if you work with your natal chart, you can look up Sagittarius and Gemini. You can look up Capricorn and Cancer and see if you have any planets or spooky spots. Yeah, like Taurus, absolutely. You can look up and see if you have any spots in those 4 signs. They're going to get some extra attention as the sun and the moon pass through those places. But also because of what's happening this year with Saturn and Jupiter, if you have anything at the very end of Capricorn or the very beginning of Aquarius, it is getting a lot of extra emphasis right now. Absolutely. Okay. So we've looked at the meditations, and now we are going to skip to tarot. And for me, sometimes this is where it all starts to kind of snap into place. Here are our tarot helpers for Yule season. Temperance is ruled by Sagittarius. The Wheel of Fortune is ruled by the planet Jupiter, which is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. In the natal chart, you want to look at your natal chart and see if you have anything going on in Sag or Gemini or Cancer Capricorn. So, Yule Tarot helpers. Temperance ruled by Sagittarius. Wheel of Fortune ruled by Jupiter, which is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. The Devil, which is ruled by Capricorn. And then the World card, which is ruled by Saturn, which rules the sign of Capricorn. These are our tarot symbols, our archetypes that we can work with from tarot. And to me, the similarities between the cards are pretty incredible. The Temperance card and the Devil are so close to each other. We have this brilliant mark on both of their heads, though they obviously mean significantly different things from one character to the other. They're both winged. We even have the torch in the same hand. And then if we look at the Wheel of Fortune and the World, we have these 2 wheels in the center, and we have these 4 archetypes around the corners. Okay. Side note, we've already done the tarot circle for the Temperance card where we talk about these guys to a greater extent. If you would like access to that, become a Patreon, and the link is up. It's $1 to become a patron, and the Dropbox is ready to go, and you can go back and check out our workshop that we did with this card and all the slides, and there's 50-some examples of the Temperance card in the Dropbox folder for you to study with. Okay, so we are working with these 4 main archetypes. If you work with tarot and you really want to go ham, you can also include the 8, 9, and 10 of Wands. Those relate to the Deacons of Sagittarius. And the 2, 3, and 4 of Pentacles. Those all relate to the Deacons of Capricorn. I'm also going to read this piece to you. This is a spell. You've been warned. At winter solstice, we can see the curve of time. If a wheel has an end and a beginning, it might be here. When we can see out across time, we can remember that this is all a grand cycle with a beat and a pulse and a flux. Nailed to the center of the wheel, we descend, we ascend, we descend, we ascend, rinse, repeat. We are thrust into the fiery forge, plunged into the quenching waters, and then hammered over and over. If we close our eyes and forget that this is an infinite cycle, we will grow scared and act from a place of fear. But through repeated experience, through trial, we can learn about ourselves and the world. We can let go of the things that weaken us. We adapt. We reconcile and rectify. Eventually, we have gained and earned wisdom and understanding, and we remember the devil and the angel are the same being, our partner in the cosmic dance of existence. The excitement of spiritual enlightenment is easily tarnished and blocked out by the doldrums of real life, and existence can seem like a burden that grows heavier by the year. As we age and gain wisdom, we must fight off cynicism and discover a way to retain our passion. It is easy to get lost in the struggle of life and to forget that we must find joy in our efforts. But without some discomfort, some dissolution, some disorganization, we may never be motivated to evolve up and out of what has been handed to us. And without restriction of the personal will and base urges of the animal mind, we will never advance as a species. Somehow, we must find an accord between our finite and infinite selves, and between ourselves and the community and the cosmos at large. Okay, so some stories, and then we'll be done. We talked at the beginning of class about deities that are going on underworld journeys. And I briefly mentioned them at Samhain, and sometimes I tell these stories at Samhain, but I'm going to tell them tonight instead. So, one story that we talk about is the Ishtar Kegel Underworld Journey. And there's a variety of reasons why the goddess Ishtar is called or intrigued with the idea of going down into the underworld, but for a variety of reasons, she decides to go. And Ishtar, also known as Inanna in the different Babylonian, Sumerian, Assyrian groups that worked with this goddess, she is a goddess of war. She's a goddess of life, virility, fertility, abundance, production, doing stuff, order, things happening here on the physical plane, charts, appointments, stuff. And she decides to go down to the underworld, to the lands of the dead, to go meet with her twin, Kegel, who is the goddess of death and the underworld and the lands of the dead. And as she goes down, Kegel is like, who's coming? Oh yeah, that's fine. But she's got to go through all the same trials that everybody else does. She's not special. She's still got to go. She's got to jump through all the hoops that everybody else does when they come to the lands of the dead. So her 7 vestments are taken off. And of course, magicians, we know 7 is a magical number. Her girdle, her lapis beads, her sandals, her cell phone. They take a variety of things from her. So she gets down to Kegel and she's been completely stripped naked. And there's a couple different versions of the story, but she ends up staying with Kegel for 3 days. That's right. And while she's with Kegel, a couple different things happen. In one version of the story, Kegel kills her. Kegel. In another version of the story, Kegel puts her on a meat hook. In another version of the story, Kegel puts her on the ground and holds her down with her hand. So she's literally in the lowest place in the universe. Kind of like the sun, right? Super, super low. And they have a conversation. And a lot of the conversation is Kegel asking Ishtar, why do you ignore me? Why don't you interact with me? Why do you avoid me? But ultimately, they come together. And sometimes they just hug. Sometimes they literally union into one person and then separate and become 2 again. While this lovely scene is taking place in the underworld, up above in the physical world, everything has stopped. Sex has stopped, the animals aren't mating, the food isn't growing, and all of the gods are like, oh, not cool, oh no, this is alert, alert. So they go and find a polygendered androgyne messenger deity, and send them out into the universe to go find Ishtar. And eventually they find them, and they are in the lands of the dead with Kegel, and they're like, hey, is there anything we can do about this whole situation? Like, everybody's flipping out. Can we have her back, please? And like I said, after 3 days, they have this ritual together, and after 3 days, Kegel says, yeah, she can go. It's fine. But she's also got to go through all the trials to get back out again. And in this myth, no one leaves the lands of the dead. So if someone leaves, there's a hole, and something has to be put back in its place. So Kegel sends Ishtar off, and Ishtar begins her ascent back up to the physical world. And she's, she passes through 7 gates, and at each gate she's given one of her things back. Here's your barrette, here's your wallet, whatever. And as she's making her way back up, she encounters people from her lifetime. Her nursemaid and her best friend at school, and the guy she bought her first dog from, like all these people. And she keeps thinking, like, I gotta send somebody back, but I'm not sending this person back. Like, they didn't do anything wrong. I'm not sending that person back. It's not their fault that I'm here. Like, they're not, they don't have, it's not their fault. So she finally makes her way back up to the real world, the physical world, excuse me. And she finds her paramour, Damuzi, or Tammuz, a vegetation deity, has happily taken over. So she's left and is hanging out on her throne and drinking her wine. He's wearing her shoes and her favorite perfume, and he's got concubines everywhere. And she's like, I think I know who I'm going to send back. Haha, okay, cute. All right. That's story number 1. Story number 2. Yeah, we're running over. Welcome to class. Okay. Story number 2 is our Persephone underworld myth. And in the most common and most recent version of that story, we have Persephone as a young girl on the brink of womanhood, and she's out picking flowers one day, and the deity Hades rides up in his chariot, snatches her, kidnaps her, abducts her, takes her down to the underworld, and tempts her with this and that and the other thing until finally he tempts her with 3 pomegranate seeds. And now that she's taken in 3 elements from the world of the dead, or the underworld, she now belongs to him, and he possesses her and ravages her body. In the meanwhile, up on the physical plane, once again, calamity has ensued, and Demeter, her mother, the goddess of all life and vegetation and grains, is not having it at all and is flipping out because she can't find her daughter. She goes to the gods. The gods are like, I don't know. And so they send an androgyne messenger being, Mercury, or Hermes, to try to go and find her. Well, Hermes knows. Mercury knows where Persephone is, knows what's going on, but acts like they don't, and is like, la 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 la. But finally they come back and report to the gods, and are like, so I found her, and it's like not good. And arguments and bartering and compromising ensues, and finally a deal is struck between Pluto, or Hades, god of the dead, lord of the underworld, and Demeter, goddess of life, lord of grains and whatnot, goddess of grains, overseen by the gods, that Pluto gets her part of the time, Pluto gets Persephone part of the time, and that Demeter gets her part of the time. Well, fuck that story, honestly. Like, who asked Persephone's opinion about any of it? No one, right? And also, yuck, patriarchy, and gross. Why do we have to have sexual assault as, like, the center metaphor of our... I don't know. I'm good. Thank you. So, we also know that that's very, very, very late Hellenic, very late in Greece's time on Earth as a civilization, and it was quite the patriarchal civilization by that point already. So if we push back further in time, we find older and different versions of this myth. And an older version of the myth is that we have Persephone at the brink of womanhood, out picking flowers, and, the strap of her dress happens to slip off of her shoulders. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if, like, some super hot guy showed up and turned me into a woman? Oh, no. And who rolls up but as I like to call him, the owner of the goth club, Pluto, or Hades, and is like, I could probably help you with that. And brings her down to the land of the dead, and he tempts her with a variety of things, and she's like, get this crap away from me, until he finally shows up with 3 pomegranate seeds. And basically what he's saying is, I witness you. I see you as a portion of the triple goddess. I know who you are. I'm not trying to screw around. I know what's up, and I'm here to happily help induct you into the next portion of your life. Cut to Demeter flipping out, same portion of the story, right? What mom is excited about their daughter finally deciding to go and have sex and define themselves as an adult? Literally no parent in the history of time has ever been excited about that. So then we have this bartering thing, but Persephone gets to be a part of the conversation. And Persephone's like, hey, I gotta grow up at some point. Calm down, Mom. I'm still gonna come over for dinner on Sundays where, you got me for like this whole portion of the year, but I like this guy, and I'm evolving, and I'm changing, and I want to know about these other things in life, and, I'm gonna go do this thing. Okay. So that's a nicer version of this story, right? But here's the even older version of the story. If we push back far enough into the chthonic past of Greece, there was no lord of the underworld. It was Hecate. Well, now that sort of changes some things, doesn't it? Well, and also now we have our triple goddess. We have Persephone, the maiden. We have Demeter, her mother, the mother. And we have Hecate, the crone. And we have Persephone saying, hey, I need to go meet this portion of myself because I cannot live as a naive person my whole life. And I want to change. I want to grow. And that means that some things in me have to die off. Mom's still freaked out. All that stuff. But Hecate is there to say, yeah, I am part of you, and you will become me at some point, and I'll become you at some point too. And here's my knowledge, and here's my wisdom, and here's this power. Now, looking at all of this metaphor all jumbled and mixed together, what do we have? Well, we have an opportunity that is we are held in this incredible biorhythm on our planet, and we have this incredible astrology around us as well, but just looking at the biorhythms of the planet, we are held in this system, in this process that happens every single year that says, go in, go deep, go into the dark, and go meet the portions of yourself that you're not dealing with. Go meet the portions of yourself that are uncomfortable, that are worn out, that are out of date and out of touch, that are holding you back, the things that are keeping you scared, the things that are keeping you from becoming the solar deity that you can be, the radiant source of life and power that you ultimately could be on this plane in this lifetime. Go meet that stuff and go reconcile it. Go hug it. Go get good and comfy with it. Again, if we don't make room for chaos, chaos will make its room. So let me have a beautiful spread for this energy. Let me have a beautiful couch to sit on and a beautiful bath drawn for my guest. Chaos and darkness and shadow and undoing and death and ending. And give it its space and give it its time. It's also something I want to really stress as we move through this. I said it in Silent Season, and I'll say it again here, is do not try to do all this stuff in a single night or a weekend or what have you. Give yourself the full expanse of the season. Yule is going to last from December 21st all the way to February 2nd. You've got all that time to have this conversation with yourselves and let these portions of yourself come up into the light and say what they need to say. And these portions of you that are normally in the light to go down into the dark and to say what they need to say and to hear what they need to hear. I think an element of our Ishtar story that's really important is how when she's coming back up from the underworld and she keeps seeing people that she knows, and she knows in her mind that she has to send somebody back, but she's like, I'm not sending you. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm not sending you. You're fine. It's coming from that place in us that's like, I have to do this psychological work and I can't push this off onto other people. This is my job. I cannot hand this off to someone else. It's not going to get done. And it's not their burden. It's not their burden. It's mine. It's mine. And it's not going to get done unless I do it. So that's the other part of it. Is this fun? No, not exactly. Am I excited about it? You know? However, do I want to evolve? Do I want to be a solar being radiating my light and power in the world? Do I want to be a world builder? Do I want to be a reality determiner? Do I want to accept the responsibility that I already am those things and I just need to actually kind of kick it into high gear? Then I've got to take this time and be in this process. We have had a tremendous amount of challenges thrown at us in this last year, regardless of whatever walk of life you are in, whatever religion, or if you're an atheist, black, white, up, down, in, out, wherever you are in life, you have had an incredible amount of challenges thrown at you this year. I give you permission to take a little time out for yourself, to stop and be still, and then to start again and to go forward. That's the only way we're going to get through this. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And there's going to be many more highs and many more lows before any of us come to the end of our lives. So if we're going to get through this as healthy, whole, amazing magicians, we've got to honor these processes and be present for them. Okay. No. Do that. Hey, there we go. All right. Here are our meditations for the season. Light is overcoming darkness. What is the light you shine in the world? What symbols, archetypes, and traditions from this time of year convey an idea of holiness to you? And we have lost and gained much this year. What deep wisdom have you earned? And how will you use it going forward? All right. Pagans, there is a whole page in here on incredible symbolism and history and fact around the constellation of Sagittarius, the great arrow Sagitta, and it striking into the very heart of the Milky Way, as well as Corona Borealis and Capricorn season. For those of you who are observing this holiday, obviously we've talked about Yule logs and torchlit processions and all of that other great stuff. I always recommend in every single class, if you do nothing else, go outside and be with the physical world. Witness the physical world. Smell the earth, look at the sky, smell the breeze, and really touch it and be present with the earth in its stage right now. That is absolutely a form of worship and observation and ritual that we can engage in as pagans. Gathering with friends and family, safely at a distance, be outside. Perfect excuse for a bonfire. Outside. Jumping a bonfire, wassailing and caroling. Oh yeah, there is a phenomenal recipe for wassail in the book, by the way. Filling the house with light, kissing under mistletoe, charitable acts, divining the new year, taking time to be alone, reaffirming your spirituality, and walking in wild places. I also recommend symbols like what we saw before, but symbols like the sun, fire, candles, evergreens, Yule log, spinning wheels, spirals, the goddess in white, the goddess giving birth to the sun. And we've got all of these slides are going to be in the Dropbox. I'm just going to scooch through them super quickly. And thank you to my incredible patrons. Oh lordy, we made it. Last class of 2020, last Yule or Wheel of the Year class of 2020. It's not the last class. So many thank you to my patrons. This has been an incredible year for me, just personally, in terms of it being a real confirmation that I'm supposed to be doing this work, which feels pretty wild. So many thank yous. You guys being patrons, even the dollar people, all the way up to the folks who have subscribed at $200 and more, which is phenomenal to me. You all have made it possible for me to make these classes free and available to the beings of Earth at this incredible time of evolution, revolution, crisis, and change. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It really has been pretty incredible. And extra ultra thank yous to my students. These are folks who have invested in the full Wheel of the Year package, or they are studying tarot with me one-on-one. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much to you guys. Again, you have made it possible for me to do this and do this for free and have my bills paid and all that stuff. Full transparency, because money's not real anyways. I made about $18,000 or $19,000 last year in total. I'm set to make about that much this year as well. Yes, I am still donating. Yes, I am still doing things for free. Yes, I'm still offering discounts on my services, because this is the world that we're trying to create, right? Money's not real. Capitalism's shit. Let's barter. Let's move into whatever comes next. And from here, from where we are right now, it's hard to see that future. It's foggy. It's murky. It's indistinct. It's ephemeral. But we are the great ones who are here to will the world into being. So, join me. Let's shine our lights. Let's be incredible. Let's be full and bright and radiant. And let us look forward to this world that we get to build together for whoever comes after us. Happy Yule. Thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything else? Oh, you can find me everywhere on social media under Megan Angus or Megan Angus Witch. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, not Twitter. Yes, Twitter, not Twitch, and here on YouTube. If you are moved by this class, like I said, you can send a donation down below. There's information in the description of this video. You can buy the workbook that I've been referring to. It's $7 for the individual workbook for this class. You can also send $30, and that will get you access to the Dropbox folder that will have the recording of this video, all the slides that we used, and some other resources, as well as the workbook and the 8-week calendar. And looking forward, this is my last live class of 2020. Again, thank you. It has been a phenomenal year. It has been really terrible and really wonderful all at the same time, which is, life, right? I will be offering one more class this year, and it is going to be a spoken word guided meditation on the world card. I will have that available, I believe, by December 21st for doing magical work on the equinox, on the solstice, as well as the time period after it. And that will be available to my patrons. Again, patronages start at $1, so you'll have access to that. And that's it. I'm done. I'm going to stop talking. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Mwah! Happy Yule. Happy long night. Happy hibernation. And happy solar return. Bye. See you guys later. Ba-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da. Ooh. Ba-da-da-da-da-da.